this today's talk is going to be about the new geospatial policy and what opportunities it creates for industry and how it can add more value and how it can help in growing the economy of the country. So I will let me just share my screen because I have a few slides to cover this topic. Yeah, are my slides visible now? Yeah, okay, good.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. So this is, as I mentioned, this is the topic about that government has liberalized mapping for in India. So it's something which let's try to understand what it means and what impact can it have on the economy. So so I've divided my talk in basically four areas. One is talking about Indian geospatial industry. Uh, and as a part of this, I will also talk about what is geospatial and what is GIS within that, and what kind of challenges we had. What is significant in the new policy framework, and where all this technology or geospatial data can be put to use and how it can create some value. And I'll also touch upon that how it gels with the government's initiative of Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. So this is how I'm going to cover this topic. So before we go deeper into it, let's look at what geospatial actually means. So geo is like geography. We understand that it's about Earth, and spatial is about the space. So together it becomes geospatial as a term. Now, broadly, we look at four segments when we talk about geospatial. One is GNSS and positioning. GNSS, Global Navigation Satellite System. So we all use navigation, whether it's Google Map or something else. It takes our position. So there are satellites which are monitoring this all the time. So that's a ecosystem which has been created. So there are satellites for weather forecasting. There are satellites for a variety of other applications. So that's a part of geospatial ecosystem. Then we come to GIS, which is geographical information systems, which are used for spatial analysis, looking at things based on their coordinate system, their location based on their location. Third one is Earth observation. So observing Earth from a remote place, it's remote sensing basically. It could be satellite image which comes from satellite. It could be the images which are captured by flying an aircraft with a camera on it. It could be through drones. So these are some of the ways where Earth observation through remote sensing takes place. And we get this data in form of satellite imagery. You would have seen images which are shared for weather forecasting. So typically they do that on TV weather systems and all those things. And the fourth part is 3D scanning. So this is important because today we want, say, 3D models of cities, or we want to know what is the height of different buildings. We want to know what is the height of trees in a forest. So there's a technology which is used, which is called LiDAR. This is light detection and ranging. That's what it's called. And it's basically pulsed laser beam which goes and it goes and hits the objects. And when it comes back, it measures the distance. So this is used for measuring heights of buildings, looking at terrain model where the earth is higher than the other areas. These are used for even creating road infrastructure in a city, so there's water logging can be avoided, and there are a number of applications like that. So basically, so broadly, these are the four things that I will. I would like to take a look at geospatial components. Now, within this, we have GIS, which is Geographical Information System. So what is it? I mean, if you look at this diagram, probably it looks very complex right now, but let me explain to you, it'll look easier. So the simplest example of a GIS is the Google map that you use every day for finding a place or ordering something. But how is it created? So for creating something like a Google map, or any other map of that kind, you have basically a base map. Base map typically will have some attributes about the area. Those attributes could be roads, it could be water bodies, it could be some buildings, it could be other things like parks and so different kind of things which are there. And it could be in form of a satellite map, or it could be in a form of another map which doesn't have satellite image, but it has roads and buildings and parks and all those things. So this is basically a base map we call, and then we enrich this base map by adding different kind of geospatial data. So I'm introducing the term geospatial so that you get a better understanding. This will have population. This could have population attributes. That how many people live in what area. What are their income patterns? What kind of dwellings they have? This could be census data. Census data is collected, so that could be a layer on a map. Then we can talk about other attributes like travel patterns, postal addresses, different buildings, bridges, lakes, rivers, street addresses, address for a building, address for a mall, address for a office location. So you can put all this and it becomes like a geographical information system, which can be put to a variety of use after that. So GIS is like any other information system. So it has a lot of data. It uses a software which is used for getting all these layers together. Different layers will have location attributes, in simple terms, latitude and longitudes. So it'll position those different attributes based on that location on the base map, so that it's coherent database. And when you try to look at one place versus the other, you are not able to, you don't get lost and you go to a wrong place. How are these things used in our day-to-day life? Very simple usage of this is like if somebody is relocating to a new city and you have a small family, you are young, you have children, your wife working somewhere or your husband working somewhere, spouse working, that would be more correct, I think. So when you try to find a place to live, you will think, okay, my children's school should not be more than like maybe 5 kilometers or 3 kilometers. My place should also be closer to my home, so that place of work, so that I don't spend too much time in commuting. And then you may have some limits on rental that you can afford to pay. So those are the attributes that you are using, and if you have a GIS system, then which lets you select those attributes, then based on your affordability, your distance to your office and school, shopping areas, health facilities, it can throw up certain residential complexes or apartments which are suitable given the parameters. So that's a very simple use of a geographical information system. But this gets expanded to organizations, business organizations, government organizations in a similar manner. So let's understand a little more about location intelligence. So we introduced this term GIS, which is Geographical Information System. Then we have mapping. So what I just explained to you, those are the kind of maps. That's how the maps are built. I'll give you an example. If there's an electric utility and they want to create a map for, say, city of Bangalore, so they will have a few, say, substations from where the energy gets distributed, and it comes to a transformer in a particular area. From transformer, it goes on different poles, and then it goes to the meters. Now, all these are assets that an electric utility owns, and they usually map these on a GIS system. What's the benefit of doing that? Because they will know which asset is where, what is the maintenance schedule, when that particular asset is due for replacement, what is the utilization of that particular asset. If transformer has a capacity of 200 kVA, then how much is in use and how much is spare. Otherwise, it's very difficult for them to find these things, and it takes a little longer time. But if it's on a GIS, it's very quick and easy to find out. So electric utility will create a map for themselves, which will have electrical lines, meters, all the assets which are there in their network. And then if they want to run some location analytics, that from at what time energy consumption is higher, is it higher between 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. versus 11 a.m. to 12 noon? So they can get that kind of information. They can, if there is spikes in certain areas, they will get to know, and they can analyze what the reasons are for that particular spike. They may look at differential pricing. They may look at if they're using smart meters, they can see consumption patterns and how if customers are using more than the authorized load, then why is it happening and what should be done about that. So those analytics can be run. So when they build a system like this, it becomes a geo-enabled system because it's based on geography. They know the location and they can take location-based decisions. And of course, different technologies play a role here. There are softwares, there are SaaS systems. These can be hosted on cloud. So all those things are available now. Having introduced you to some of these concepts of geospatial and GIS, let's look at what is the market. So this is a market data which came out of a study which was conducted in 2018. So let's look at the data for 2021. So this is an estimate which was prepared in 2018. Okay, so it may or may not be accurate. The world has changed since then. Things have not been same. So the largest market is in GNSS and positioning. I think the satellites are expensive, the data is expensive, it's used in many areas. That's a larger market. The second largest is the GIS and spatial analytics segment. Here, there is software, there are applications, there's a services component, and also there are some instruments which are used for data capture and the data capture activity per se. When I talk about data capture, take an example that if a new highway is being built, then the survey has to be done about the area which has been identified for highway construction. So a bunch of people will go there with instruments, take some location information, take some readings about distance, height, terrain, so that the highway can be designed. So that is a very large chunk, is in 2,674 crores. And the next one is Earth observation, which is 246 crores. This is basically the value of satellite images and other other remote sensing data which is created in the country, and whether funded by government or private agencies. But that's the size. And 3D scanning and LiDAR is higher. It's about 436 crores. I would say if one wants to create a LiDAR survey of a city like Mumbai, it'll probably cost 50, 60, 70 crores, something in that range. And it might take a few months to do that. You might have seen some vehicles going around, some sensors on top. I think those are the devices which are used for LiDAR survey. So they are driven along the road and they capture the data on the both sides of the road or whatever buildings are visible. And after that, all this data is to be processed to make sense out of it. So that's a market size. There was a forecast done for 2021 for different segments. This was also done in 2018. So some of the segments where the use of geospatial technologies has been traditionally higher have been captured here. These are infrastructure, urban development, utilities, education and research, water resources and irrigation, land administration and rural development, mining, oil and gas. Then we have this is NMA. I don't know what it is. Retail and logistics, BFSI, and some other segments. Oh, this is national mapping agencies. So which are like Survey of India, Geological Survey of India, Forest Survey of India, and all that. So this was also done by Geospatial Media and based on a study which they conducted. So the largest here is infrastructure. followed by urban development. This is because of big projects which are coming in smart city and urban missions. So that's creating a lot of demand. Utilities is the third largest one. It's a very important segment. We have electric, gas, water, and telecommunications. So these are four major utility segments. A lot of deployments have happened in the country for electric utilities. Gas is picking up. There are a number of companies who've been awarded multiple cities for providing city level gas to households, and that business is picking up quite well. Water distribution in our country is not advanced much, other than few larger ones like Delhi Jal Board or Bangalore Water Supply and Sewage Board and MCGM and Orange City Water in Indore. There are just a few handful of examples about using geospatial technologies or GIS for water distribution, but there's a lot of potential in these segments. And then there are other ones which are smaller. BFSI and retail and logistics are two in the which are mostly in private sector, and some part of mining and oil and gas is also in private sector. Mining is picking up well, oil and gas is picking up well, and I think retail and logistics has grown more than what was predicted in 2018. It's done better than that. And in BFSI also we see some activity going on. A lot of insurance companies have started investing, and some financial services companies are using this technology as well. All right, so let's look at what were the issues for geospatial sector until 15th of February, when government announced a new set of guidelines. So I mean, I'm a part of the industry, and we were dealing with 15 different policies which were announced over 3 decades. Imagine the level of technology which was there 30 years ago and what it is today. And other funny thing was that all these policies were in force. So one did not know which one to follow and which one not to follow. Even though some policies, there were duplicate policies to address one particular thing, but nobody bothered to say that the old policies are no longer applicable. Look at only the new one. So industry was confused. Even government organizations did not know what to do. So it was a very, very difficult situation. So if anybody had to collect any data, they would need a lot of permissions. I mean, basically, no data survey could have been done without getting permissions, and that too from many departments, which includes Ministry of Defense and Home Ministry as well. It was most difficult to get permission from these departments, because if there is a highway construction getting
You've gone on mute.
Yeah, I don't know why it happened.
Yeah, you know. Okay.
Okay. So so too much, and it did not matter to defense or MHA, and it used to take a long time to get the permissions. There were a lot of restrictions on geospatial data. What I mean by this is that if one department has created some data, they did not know whether they can pass it on to another department. So as a result of that, public money was being spent on creating same data again and again by different departments. There are restrictions, like if you want to use a satellite data, then everything needs to go through Department of Space. And any customer who orders a data, they will first place an order. Then if it has to come from a foreign vendor, which is the case in most situations, then it will come to Department of Space, and they will look at the data. And it used to take a long time for them to go through all the data and mask areas which they call sensitive. These will be all military offices, all if it's Delhi, then many government buildings will be masked in that, and the masking process used to take a long time, because it will be done each time a new map, a new image comes for supply. And also data availability, as I mentioned, that departments were not allowed to share, and so everybody had to recreate. And imagine private sector, if they want to create a data, they will have to first apply, wait for permissions, and then start survey, and then submit it back for masking of sensitive areas if there are any. So it was a very long cycle. Many projects get delayed, sometimes delays of 6 months or longer. Now, these delays mean that cost overrun, people waiting. So I mean, the vendor or the contractor will just wait, and his total cost of the project will go up. Whether he gets compensated by government is a different thing, but and that's why we see a lot of projects where land acquisition is required or a construction is required, they keep getting delayed. All right, so let's look at the highlights of new policy. So what happened is that in the interim for last at least a decade, the industry was requesting again and again to government to come out with better policies and processes. And what we see in the policy today is a result of that. And most of the requests which were made by the industry have been captured in the new policy document. So that's a very good sign. Government has listened, even though it's after a long gap, but at least they have looked at it in a very positive manner. And some very pragmatic steps have been taken, like what is available globally does not need to be regulated in India. If somebody outside India can buy, why should an Indian company or an individual or a government department not be allowed to use the same data? All the geospatial data produced using public fund to be made available either free or at a nominal price to Indian users, whether they are from private sector or government or academia or research, they will have, or individuals, they'll have access to that data. Government departments will set up geoportals to share data. So that's also a part of the policy document, that each government department will set up a system where they will publish the data which can be used by other people by including web feeds into different applications, so that there's no physical movement of data. It is moving just through a web application or an API. And each department will have a focal point for creation and sharing of geospatial data. We have another problem that see, most of the data is created by government in any countries, and that's the case here as well. I would say that there are challenges, like it's very difficult for people to get the right boundaries for villages or districts or states or international boundaries. So these have to come from authoritative sources, which essentially means government. So they will produce this data and share in open domain so that people can get access to it. So basically, the idea here is that by coming out with this geospatial data policy, government is looking at taking the total geospatial ecosystem from something like 20,000 crores, which is now to 100,000 crores by 2030. And currently in about 20,000 crores, there's about 7,000 crores, which comes from export business, and also create 2.2 million jobs. I think it can be even more. If we hit 100,000 crores, the jobs will be much more than what is being looked at. So basically, we are looking at data creation. We are looking at portals for data dissemination, creating geo-enabled systems, and I will give you examples of these systems, and a lot of new applications and solutions. And I'll also share some examples of these solutions with you. So let's look at where the opportunity comes. So what happens is that today, like in our personal life, we use maps for going somewhere or buying something, or placing order from a restaurant and things like that, or using Uber. Or similarly in business, it's important that we use maps, and it's important that we create dashboards to get all that map data into one place, so that it's visible to decision makers for making better decisions. Why is it important? Because one is that location is pervasive. So everything that we have has a location, whether it's my office or my manufacturing location or my location of my customers, location of my suppliers. So it's important to make use of the location. of each, each part of each organization or each partner that I have for my business. And for that, we create a geospatial infrastructure, which is nothing but a system where you host your applications, you connect your data, you write your application softwares, and then you create maps and dashboards. So basically, that's what you do. And the beauty here is that these maps can be shared among people. So, so if I go back to the earlier example of an electric utility, if a lineman goes and changes a electric meter, then when he makes an entry through his mobile device, he captures the location of the new meter, and he will capture the primary attributes like meter number, what is the current reading, and what is the rated capacity. So once he enters all this in a system, the database gets updated and everybody will get the revised maps. So in everybody's map, it'll get updated. What I mean by everybody, there could be a billing system, there could be an inventory management system. So all those maps will also automatically get updated. Similarly, if there's a retail organization and they open a new retail location, if they bring that on map, then all the concerned departments will get information and they can look at, okay, what inventory needs to go there, how do we market, how do we communicate to people in that neighborhood so that they know there's a new store which has come up. So those kind of maps can be shared among people. So actually it creates engagement among different people in an organization. And today there are many apps, many useful apps which can be created, and they can be used through mobile devices so that they can be used anywhere, anytime. And they're run through this infrastructure which we have created. So there's a common data repository which is used across the organization. And then there are visualization and analytics helps in better decision making. So whether it is through 3D cities or getting those dashboards which are giving real-time information, or maps which are giving real-time information, simple things like vehicle tracking. So all those things help people in running the businesses in a better manner. Let's look at some examples. So 3D modeling of cities is becoming very popular these days. There's a concept of BIM and GIS integration. BIM is building information modeling. So if you see on the left side, or the bottom left side, there's a complex building. So imagine in this kind of a setup, if a new person needs to find out a new conference room, or you want to manage the electricity, you want to conserve electricity, and automatically schedule shutting down of electricity in the rooms which are not being used. So all those applications can be run in a very automated manner, and people can have mobile devices through which they can start the air conditioning in the room few minutes before they reach, and that can be automated. They don't have to do it every time. So everything can be connected from the time they are coming in their car, they find a parking which is pre-assigned to them through an app. And as they park the car, the air conditioning can start in the room, the lighting can start in the room. So all those things can be automated using these technologies. Then other examples like ride sharing, looking at how the better bus routes can be planned. How do you track different vessels in the ships and all that? So all those different kind of applications. I spoke about utilities, so things like gas distribution networks and fiber network management. In India, there are a number of gas utilities who are using these already. Indraprastha Gas, then Gujarat Gas, Adani. So they're all using these, and there are few other gas companies who are using. In telecommunication, Airtel, Vodafone and Reliance are big users of this technology. Most of the electric utilities in the country are already using geospatial technology. So those are the kind of some examples we have. Then in business analytics, there are a number of examples in terms of managing the agriculture labor demand, which is quite seasonal. Retail site selection is an important one. In India also, it is being used quite a bit. Distribution planning, optimum route and scheduling, So those are some of the applications. Insurance risk is another one which is globally very popular in India. In India also, several insurance companies are using geospatial technology. One very popular area is crop insurance because there are a lot of regulations out there. Those are some of the areas where it's being used. Then there are stories about COVID dashboards. I think there are most of the states are using technology to monitor the spread of pandemic and what actions are they should take, and if they take an action, what's the impact of that action. So this captures information which comes from different healthcare facilities, different city municipal corporations. So all that comes on a dashboard, which can be viewed at the chief minister or a health minister's level for taking some decisions. The number of smart city applications in terms of local transportation, city mobility, parking management, traffic management, those are very popular. Then there is another examples of Kerala State Electricity Board and Orange City Water for water distribution that I spoke about. Thrissur Municipal Corporation is using it for water distribution. Then there are other applications like in Maharashtra Industrial Development Corporation. So allocation of land, somebody who wants a new land for industry can go and look at various sites available, see availability, the cost, and all those things on a portal, and then make an online application and get that place. There are a lot of other applications which are being built. Now coming to Atmanirbhar Bharat, it's an important initiative of Government of India announced by Prime Minister a few months ago. I think the primary focus here was reducing dependence on foreign countries in several areas, especially where it's strategic or prudent for the country to produce things internally. I think defense was one area which has been identified for a lot of local production. Government is also looking at reducing the import of white goods which can be produced in the country. Of course, when those things are looked at, mobile phones and air conditioners and refrigerators and those kind of things, government is pushing people. They're coming out with PLI schemes so that people can set up businesses here. So similarly, when it comes to geospatial area, the policy does talk about that government will introduce some production link incentive in this area. Of course, it's a very small. It's just a few sentences in the policy. We need to see that how it unfolds, what details come out. But it's good that if government can provide some incentives for local investment, it will help. The policy also has a differentiation between Indian and foreign entities. Basically, it says that Indian entities are free to collect, process, and store any kind of geospatial data. There's no restriction whatsoever. For foreign entities, there is a threshold limit which has been set, which is like 1 meter ground accuracy. So if it's 1 meter ground accuracy, for most applications, we do not see any challenge. If you want to, for most of the business applications, if you want to find a store location or where should we set up an ATM, where are my customers located? A lot of retail organizations have loyalty programs. And if they want to see the location of all their customers who are members of the loyalty programs, 1 meter accuracy is more than what they need. It's much more than that. Even if it's 5 meter, it's all right. Even an ATM location, if it's 5 meter here and there, it doesn't matter. Okay, so it's not a big deal. But for some applications like land management, when it comes to buying and selling land, especially rural land, sometimes 1 meter becomes too much. Like you don't want to give up 1 meter land. In such cases, there is a possibility that foreign entities can source that data from Indian companies for that particular requirement. So it's not that they cannot use, they can still use it, but they just have to source from an Indian company. I think that provides enough room for them to play. There could be some challenges for companies who collect data for mapping applications. For example, Google. There may be some challenge, but let's not get into that because it's a very specific applications. And even for normal driving, like navigation, when we use a Google map, it has an accuracy, location accuracy of 15 meters. So it doesn't matter. But if you look at connected cars or autonomous vehicles, that's when 1 meter or sub 1 meter data becomes important. So those are fewer applications. So it's not a big concern. Many companies which are present in India, foreign companies that deal in technologies and not so much in data. They all, like companies like Esri India, my company, we are a technology company. But if it comes to data, we anyway work with Indian partners. We have many partners in India who provide that data. In any case, most of the data that we require is more than the threshold, so we are not concerned about any challenge in this area. When we look at private entities, my experience is that most of the data exists within the organization. For most of the analytics work, it's an organization's own data. It's a data which is already there in their SAPs and CRM systems. And you only need some data to compare with, which is external data. And very often that data can be sourced from Indian entities. So should not be a challenge. And some of the areas where I see more applications coming in, these are like financial services, insurance, manufacturing, retail, logistics, oil and gas, utilities, real estate, and architecture, engineering, and construction. So these are key sectors. So I mean, we've seen a very innovative application in financial services segment. There are companies who provide loans for buying white goods. Like you're going to buy a refrigerator for 20,000 rupees. They will quickly, in minutes, they will approve your installment payments for that. You can pay over 2 years or something. So often they take your address, they put it on a map in an automated way. Then they will immediately know whether there are too many defaults in that area or very few defaults in that area. If there are very few defaults, they normally don't worry about that. If there are too many defaults, yes, they may be concerned, and then they go a little deeper in terms of analytics. So if they automate, it's cheaper, it's faster, and the turnaround time can be reduced, and more business value can be derived. Similarly, insurance, we spoke about agriculture insurance. Manufacturing companies have actually a lot of applications, especially larger manufacturing organizations, because they source raw materials. Sometimes it comes from very distant locations. They may have multiple sources for raw materials, and they may have different stocking points, and they may have different distribution points. I mean, if you take an example of an automobile company, they will have suppliers, and they will often have multiple suppliers for a part because they didn't want to depend on one. So take an example of a rainy season when there is flooding happening in some area, and if they have that information on a map, then they will know that from a vendor who is either in an area where there's flooding, or the route from that manufacturer to their plant comes through an area which is flooded. So there could be a delay in supply. So they can depend more on the other vendors who are not in a flooding zone. They can have their customers on a map because they anyway capture the location, the addresses. And once you have an address, geocoding is a term which is used, that converting that address into a information on the map. That's fairly automated. If the addresses are correct, then at least at the pin code level, it is very, very easy. Beyond that, there are still challenges because the data is not that fine. It will take a few years for such a fine data to be available in India, because only now the policy has been relaxed, and there will be companies coming up who will start collecting data. So that data, once it starts coming in, the location accuracy on the maps will become easier. You would have found that when you are going to somebody's house through and using Google Map, sometimes you don't really reach the exact place unless he sends you a location, right? So those challenges will go away in few years time when more data is available. So similarly in logistics, in there are applications, we all see that delivery of various things which is happening, it happens on maps. So first time a distribution company visits your place to deliver, they actually capture the location, so the next person who's coming to deliver, he doesn't need to invest time in locating your place. So those are some of the applications. Oil and gas is a major one where pipelines are there, and there are a lot of SCADA systems which get connected with geospatial technology. We've spoken enough about utilities, and in real estate also there are applications in terms of, as I mentioned, uh, uh, one of the examples was that building information modeling and GIS integration. Another area is 3D modeling, create 3D model of the area of the building, and also do indoor mapping. So indoor mapping is becoming very popular, which is like mapping, indoor mapping of airports, of large malls, large uh, campuses. So those are the applications which are catching up, and it's picking up. And AEC is another area where a lot of designing happens. So how good the design is. When we talk about design of an area or a part of a city, there's a very important concept which comes in, which is geo design. It's a design based on geography, and what it means is that if you have a piece of land and you are creating a brownfield, a smart city or a part of a smart city, uh, then you have to worry about where people live, where they work, where the industries are going to be, where the places of recreation are going to be, how much park you should have, park and other places where people can, and how do you make that city safe and secure. So all those things can be I mean, this technology can help in managing all that while designing a place. So these are some of the key sectors. How do we create value? So value creation, there are multiple things. You improve the efficiency of any of the business, they will create some extra value. You cut down the time government takes to build a highway, uh, you're creating value. You improve your agriculture, you're creating value. In agriculture, it's there are multiple applications, things like how do you balance availability of different kind of agriculture produce and not have a situation that we are, which we believe is in Punjab, that too much of wheat and rice is grown, and rice is not a crop that Punjab should be growing, and they're actually misusing the water resources. There's a well-known fact that 70% of good quality water actually gets consumed in agriculture. So if you save some water in agriculture, it's a big saving. I mean, that water doesn't come back. I mean, so you're saving that water. Use of pesticides and fertilizers, if that can also be done based on the crop situation and the weather and the climatic conditions, they can be saving there. So saving in logistic costs, saving in uh, in energy consumption. So all those things add to value creation. Uh, so 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 looking at this, there are many pressure points that we have today. We have pressure points in terms of water conservation. We have pressure points in terms of giving uh, drinking water to every household. That's also an agenda of government. So there's a big play for private sector in these segments. So water distribution will, government is looking at reducing the government's involvement in many areas. So as geospatial technologies are becoming easily available to people and there is a relaxation in policy, I think it offers a great opportunity for private sector to get into this segment, especially the Indian companies, and create that data, create that application, and it'll add to a lot of employment. Potentially, geospatial segment can be as attractive and as important as the IT sector or ITES sector is today. So if you go back to late 90s, there was hardly any IT sector in India. I mean, it was a very small industry. There was hardly any export. But look at today. How it happened? Because there was a focus from private sector and government both. There were incentives given. Now, same thing is we have been trying to convince government to look at geospatial segment as a strategic segment where government should make some investment and government should ease out the policies because those are required for private sector to come forward and invest. So we need good policy, we need stable policies from government, and this we seem to be getting there. So it's a time for us to make investments in this segment so that we can create more value. So that's all I had.